What's up, everyone? It is James here with more of the Baekfast Club, a VGC talk show slash podcast, which is the second season that we're running currently, but it is the first season that we're running it on Spotify as well. You can find the podcast on both Spotify and YouTube, and it's been doing pretty well. So I want to thank everyone who's been listening on Spotify because we recently reached over 100 listeners on Spotify. I am nowhere near on the platform, so I think that's like a really cool achievement, especially for the first episode in only a week. I think that's amazing. And I do want to shout out to everyone who has been watching it on the YouTube as well. And apparently, I didn't know before, but I thought Spotify podcasts were only listening only. But apparently they have video on it, so I don't have to do any extra work other than just upload it to that platform. So that makes it a lot easier. Again, if you want to check it out, YouTube and Spotify, down below in the description, or I guess the notes section for Spotify. I don't know what they really call it. But we have a pretty interesting topic today. A little bit more of a fun discussion. Last time we discussed more about the meta game and like the facts, and you know that can be a little bit technical and a little bit boring. Today we have a bit more of a fun theoretical one where we have a pretty interesting poll that was run by the Play Pokemon account. And if you don't know, Play Pokemon is the program that is the Pokemon circuit. So we have a pretty interesting poll here which says, hey trainers, we're curious to know what has been your favorite hashtag Pokemon VGC. Who uses hashtags, by the way? Who uses hashtags anymore? It's 2025, almost 2026. Who uses hashtags anymore? Come on. But hashtag Pokemon VGC regulation set in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet so far. And then because they only have like a few poll options, because usually most polls will only be like 4 different options, we have some pretty interesting ones. We have Regulation C, Regulation F, Regulation I, and others. Comment below. And let me just say, it'll probably be regulations because technically Series A and B, or it was Series A or B, I can't even remember. Like, it used to be like series instead of regulations. They changed it to regulations after the 3rd iteration, which is regulation set C. That's when regulations first became a thing. But otherwise, like, it was just a rebrand. Like, it was like, I think series A and series B, and then they just changed it to call it regulation. I don't know why they made that change. I don't even know if it was necessary. I guess they didn't want to confuse the Scarlet and Violet ones, but with the Sword and Shield ones, because we used to call them series throughout. But like, I really just don't know. But a lot of players have been speculating that this potentially might be a vote to figure out, hey, potentially we don't know the release date of Champions yet, and the format for Regulation H for tournaments is scheduled to end in November. What would you like as a potential format? That's what people have been speculating. And I'm going to say, I think in my personal opinion, I honestly don't think this poll is going to matter. Like, I realistically don't think this poll is going to matter. But a lot of them are like, okay, let's speculate about like, oh, what could the next format be? Because they're probably bringing back an old Scarlet Violet regulation. And like, then there was like all this Twitter course about like which format it is. We're really getting political in the VGC community, which, you know, I'm not sure if that's a good thing, especially on VGC Twitter. I'm not on VGC Twitter, really. I only came to this tweet. I voted what I wanted, and then I was out. Like, that is like the only involvement I've had on VGC Twitter for like the last, I don't know, like 6 months. Like, otherwise I'll just like look at my DMs randomly from time to time. And of course, like, if I need to log in to give credit to like someone who built a team, I'll do that. But like, otherwise I really am not. So I don't think, and I mean, I don't think we're going to have this poll really matter. But I thought we would do a fun episode. Let's do some speculation about these formats. So Regulation Set C, if you don't know, was the 3rd regulation, which involved, basically, it was like the Scarlet Violet before the DLC stuff with all the Paradox Pokemons and the Ruins Pokemons. Regulation Set F involved the DLC, which also involved Pokemon like Urshifu, Pokemon Home as well, which was Urshifu, like Rillaboom and more. Then we had like the inclusion of the DLC, which included like all the starters, including like Incineroar and more. Then we had Regulation Set I, which was the one we used at the recent World Championship. That's with everything pretty much legal, double restricted, and just no mythical Pokemon. And then they had an other option because you can't fit all of the options into one poll. And they actually ran this on several accounts. There was the Twitter account as well as the Instagram and YouTube account. The polls were pretty similar. I'm pretty sure Regulation C, it did win the Twitter poll. I'm pretty sure that Regulation F won one of the Instagram or the YouTube polls. And then like, yeah, it's pretty much kind of similar, right? Regulation I, unfortunately, was just down in the dust. But I felt like, oh, that can't be it for this episode, right? Like all we did was, you know, Regulation C is pretty much has been the winner. Regulation F was pretty close, and then Regulation I kind of got blown out of the water. Unfortunately, people don't like mythicals, or not mythicals, legendary Pokemon, but you know. But I thought we would do a little bit of a fun episode here. And I mean a bit of a fun episode. Because like I could sit here and talk about like this poll, but we already kind of just did, right? We talked about the results. I gave you a brief rundown of what this format was. Let's discuss about, I think, the different regulations in Scarlet and Violet and put them on a tier list. So that is exactly what we're going to do. We have this Scarlet and Violet regulation tier list with all the regulations that have been in Scarlet and Violet, and we're going to rank them. We're going to talk about them. We're going to go through them a bit throughout history, and then we're going to tier them. So that is going to be the goal for today's video, because I thought, you know, we might as well talk about all the different regulations that we're talking about everyone's favorite. And even though I don't think it's, again, going to matter what the poll results are, I think it's just, you know, I thought it'd be fun to talk about since we are coming up towards the end of Scarlet and Violet. Literally, I think either probably when I upload this, Legends of ZA will be already out, and then we'll be looking forward to like Champions and Gen 10 and all that. So I thought we would talk about all the Scarlet and Violet formats because I thought that would be pretty interesting. So let us get started and talk about these formats. So let's see, if we were ranking them based on this ranking poll, I think we would do this, we would do this, we would do this, and we would do this. And because there's no other letters here, I think we're done. I think we're done. I think that's pretty accurate, right? I think that's a pretty accurate poll. What can I say? What can I say? Okay. We won't really do it like that. But I actually never really thought about like my favorite regulations in series and all that in Scarlet Violet. If you don't know, I'm actually really not a huge fan of Gen 9. I've talked about this several times throughout like my internet history online on both YouTube and Twitch where I do stream. So make sure you go check those out if you haven't already. But for the most part, I am not the biggest fan of like Gen 9 competitive, mainly because of not the biggest fan of terrestrialization. I think it's like better than Dynamax. Don't get me wrong. I still think it's still probably a better mechanic than Dynamax, but I do think that the power creep and all of those factors just probably lower my standards a bit for like Gen 9 in general. And also, like, by the way, the context of like how we're ranking this is going to be in Generation 9. So even though, like, let's say I have something in S for like a ranking, it means it's only for Generation 9. Like, I think most of these formats realistically would probably be in like the bottom half of my ranking system in general for like VGC formats in general. So I do want to give that a no. Like, I don't think it's bad, but what am I kidding? Like, this is my podcast. I will give my opinion. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of like, again, all the power creeps, the home stuff, the fact that we still had Urshifu, the fact that we have like so many dumb things, like all the moves, the power creep. Again, like for instance, all the legendary Pokemon were kind of saying other than Terapagos, which was annoying to deal with, but Koraidon, super powerful. And then we had like a lot of Gen 9 Pokemon just succeed because of like how incredible their stats are and abilities, and how they're pretty much tailored towards like their strengths more than like having actual weaknesses. And I don't think terrestrialization helped with that, because for instance, I want to break through a Kingambit in one shot, and its weakness is 4 times weak to a type like fighting. But when you can terrestrialize out of that, it's a lot more powerful. Like, it has a lot less weaknesses to exploit, which I'm not the biggest fan of. However, I think all that rambling aside, I think I just, you know, I could go like a long debate, and I probably have already, about like mechanics and stuff. Let's just get into the tier list for the actual like regulations, and we'll rank them. So I'll also talk about like the context of like how it would affect into the poll, because there would be some things that would change because of the poll unless they did some very specific rules here. So Regulation A, if you don't know, this is the regulation that kicked things off. The first format of Scarlet and Violet. This was literally the first format of Scarlet and Violet, and all it was the oh man, the Paldea Pokedex. I couldn't remember what the region was called for a second, but no Ruin Pokemon, which is Qianpao, Chiyu, Tinglu, and Wochien, alongside no Paradox Pokemon. So it was just basically all your standard Mons in the Pokedex of the base game. So again, we're going to be going through like the history about this in a bit, but Regulation A, it was such a weird decision. I don't get it. We only had basically a month and a half realistically. Like there was only a month of tournaments. As you can see, there's only 2 tournaments in this regulation. By the way, like all the lists I'll be saying isn't technically complete because of the fact that these are only for tournaments that have been on Arcanine, and that's usually for like America and Europe. It doesn't usually count like Japan Nats, for example. It doesn't count like the Asian Pacific region and more. So I will say that this list is a bit incomplete, but it's not like we're doing a super big deep dive, right? We're just going to be like going through a bit by bit on these tournaments and just getting a grasp of how the meta was, but I'm not really like going to go super in depth, right? So yeah, Regulation A, we only had tournaments in literally January, and that was it. Like you had December, which is when Scarlet and Violet was basically around. You would play for that, and then the tournament started in January, and that was basically the 2 months we had. Like literally, as you can see, tournaments only lasted for a month, which makes it really hard to really tier because we didn't have really much evolution, right? It was literally the first regulation of Scarlet and Violet. Everyone was getting used to terrestrialization. We were finding out like what Pokemon were good, what Pokemon might not have been great. We were all experimenting at this point because a lot of new Pokemon that were introduced, a lot of different abilities, and again, trying to figure out how terrestrialization would actually impact the game and like how it was best to utilize it, right? So we have San Diego regionals for Regulation A, and we'll be going over the other regional as well. And then let's look a brief bit at the teams. I mean, we have, if you can't tell, like this team, for example, as I said before with Gen 9 Power Creep, it's literally 5 Pokemon that got introduced in Gen 9. Sure, Tauros isn't a Gen 9 Pokemon, but it's a Gen 9 form, so technically it is a brand new Pokemon. We literally have 5 Pokemon here that is Gen 9, and then Mimikyu, which there were a very big lack of fairy types here, so Mimikyu was pretty solid. Meowscarada, really strong because it's speed tier, because the speed tiers were way different in Regulation A compared to like the later tiers. So Meowscarada is one of the fastest Pokemon. Flower Trick was able to help against Dondozo, which was a bit annoying, and Flower Trick, of course, being solid. Knockoff to be able to outspeed Pokemon like Golden Go and threaten it. And then Golden Go itself, of course, fantastic Pokemon in Scarlet Violet's history in general for VGC. Choice Specs was probably more common, but we also saw, of course, Nasty Plot Setup. I think a little less common, but was a thing. And yeah, like for the most part, like a lot of these threats. Garganico, of course, winning the first regional because of the fact that Poison Terrestrialization, there really were not many ground types. Like it was basically just Garchomp, and if you didn't have a Garchomp, you were running like Earthquake Dondozo as your ground coverage, and then yeah, like so Garganico was really annoying to deal with, especially with Salt Cure being able to chip away. No one really knew how to handle this Garganico set, and yeah, it was pretty potent. And then we had, as you can see by the meta, Dondozo was actually pretty decently common because it was, of course, a brand new thing, and of course Dondozo back then did have a very, very dumb mechanic with like order up, because if you don't know from this regulation, order up from Dondozo would, if you do fail into like a protect, or if you fail into like a slot, you would still get the boost. For some reason, you would still get the boost, even like, so it made order up basically a no drawback move to go for, because you always would get the boost no matter what with Dondozo. And that kind of made it really ridiculously broken. Like Dondozo was absolutely insane. I still don't get why if Tatsugiri switches out or switches into the Dondozo and you target into the Tatsugiri slot, the move isn't redirected into Dondozo. I still don't get why that they kept that in. But yeah, like if you fought Dondozo, if you joined later in VGC regulations, like towards the later part, yeah, they had to patch that out because of the, or at least patch the order up, like how it works, because it was so absurd. I'm kind of curious how it would affect it now, but we'll talk about like changes in a bit. I'm just judging the regulation for how it was back then. But yeah, Dondozo, absolutely absurd. Then we have like Palafin Rain, which was able to get into top 4. And I don't think many players really explored with Palafin. As you can tell, there's only like 2 Palafins in the top 16. But of course, Palafin ended up becoming a stronger mon later on because of like how you would interact with the Zero to Hero, and of course having Haze. I think if the regulation continued later on, Haze Palafin would have definitely picked up because it's like really strong into Dundozo in general. And as you can see, just Rain offense was just really good, right? For the early parts, like Rain, Swift Swim, powerful water type moves in general are just going to be super strong. We saw like this really offensive team getting top, like these offensive Rain teams just getting top 4. And then like again, Dundozo offense in top 8. We have a very fast offensive Tailwind team from Giovanni getting top 8. James Evans featuring a really cool Snow team because of like the changes to Snow. Snow was brand new in Generation 9 and able to use the Titan, a brand new Pokemon with the Gothito trapping. And then in top 8, Giovanni running the same team that was able to get first place here. So yeah, I mean, oh, there was actually 3 Palafins. I missed this Palafin. I only was kind of Palafins here, but there were 3 Palafins in top 16. But I think it would have probably rose more because if you want to counter Dundozo, one of the strongest Pokemon, having Haze Palafin was probably super ideal. Granted, it was still a little bit annoying because a lot of the Dundozos would either run like Terra Grass, Terra Blast, or Terra Flying, Terra Blast. So not super easy, but I think Palafins would have probably adapted with like Terra Grass Palafin just to counter the Dundozos in that case. But yeah, like you see a lot of Dundozo, Tatsugiri stuff. Even Wolf ended up using Dundozo Tatsugiri for this event as well. And yeah, like a lot of this, you saw quite a few cool Pokemon. You do see some like staples though. Golden Go, of course, super strong. You saw like stuff like Meowscarada, of course, being powerful. Just Dundozo Tatsugiri was absolutely insane in general. And yeah, there was definitely a lot. Again, this is the first regional of a brand new format, so there was going to be a lot of room to experiment over time. But I think we can kind of see like what was strong here. Then we can probably go into the other event of this tournament, which was Liverpool. And Liverpool ended up Dundozo winning. Dundozo winning and Heartshooken getting second place. And if you don't know what the meta was like for Regulation A, a lot of it was basically like a lot of these duos where we had Indeedee plus Armarouge size spam, the Annihilate plus Mouse hold combination, and then you had like Dundozo Tatsugiri. Like those were probably like the main 3 staples like everyone was trying to figure out. And yeah, like just in general, like I mean, it's not like too different from what we have now, but it was really hard to navigate through those like during this time period because there's a lot you did have to prepare for, and then of course the unknown. So yeah, there was quite a bit. However, Mouse Ape didn't really pop off at like the first regional. I think there was like 1, maybe 2, I think, in this top 16 in general of Mouse Ape. But yeah, like across the board, the Noza was super powerful, Rain was super powerful, just offense was pretty good. Although I think this top 4 team by Francesco ended up running like a stallish team. Yeah, it had like Banded Dragapult as a wall breaker, but then it had like T-Spikes with Glamora. By the way, I think Glamora was super underrated for like what it was back then. I think Glamora was crazy good. Then you had like Fire Spin, Rouge Dragonite with Salcure Garganico. Yeah, there was some crazy stuff that was being tested in this regulation. I think there were a lot of cool Pokemon, and again, a lot of room for exploration as well. Like a lot of people were just trying to figure out like what was good at the time and trying out a lot. I think overall, I don't think this was a bad format. Like this format, I think was pretty cool for the most part. The thing is, you did only get it like 1 month, literally 2 tournaments, and that was it. I don't even know if there were any other I don't think there were any tournaments because in January, other than these 2, because like this was January, so I don't think most of Asia was playing this format yet. So yeah, like just in general, I would say that it's a cool format. The thing is, my problem with it is how would it have aged, right? Because like I think everyone remembers like the beginning of a new generation and like us trying to figure it out, but what would it be like now if we return to it? Because I feel like the format definitely would have evolved. We would have seen like the adaptations we see in like Regulation B and Regulation C probably apply here. So I don't know if I would say, oh, this is an amazing format. I know there are like players who praise this format. I'm not like one of those. I was like optimistic, right? I'm like, this format's okay, but it's not like, I don't think it's like so incredible. But for Gen 9 standards, I think it was pretty decent. I think age-wise, like again, it would be a bit strange. I think Dundozo would have definitely probably been either more optimized, because of course you are trying to beat through like Haze Palafin now, or it would have just been like, okay, What else pops up? Rain is going to be a thing. There's still some defensive. Like, I think there's just like a lot of like different styles that really work in this regulation, which is nice. There's like the Tailwind HO mode. There's the hard trick room setup that was able to do well. There's like defensive teams. There's way more offensive teams. There's balanced teams as well. There's some screen stuff like we saw, like Brady getting top 16 in the San Diego one. So I think there are a lot of different playstyles that could work. I think the duels were still really frustrating to deal with, but I think in general, like, I thought this format was pretty decent for what we got. So I just, again, am optimistic because I'm kind of curious, okay, what if everyone knew like the optimal way to play Terra, since we got used to Terra over time? Like, again, we were still learning during this time period how good it would have been. And yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. And I think it's a really hard call because there's a lot that could be said. Like, a lot of these Pokemon could be irrelevant. There could have been some adaptations across the board. I think we can see like kind of a pattern here. But yeah, again, I don't think anyone super tried to build. So I think it's a format that has potential. Do I think it was like the most amazing format? Personally, no. But I thought it was like decent. And for Gen 9 standards, I thought it was like probably up there a bit. So I think if I was to rank Regulation A as it was, I think I'd probably put it in B tier. Maybe potential close to A, but I think I'll hold my judgment as I, like, again, because I never really thought about these regulations much before. I think I'd put in B tier, and then if I think it's higher than like a lot of this stuff or some, you know, different thoughts coming to mind, I'll probably move it to A. But I think B or A makes a lot of sense to me. Because again, this was a super short format and there's like a lot less context that we have for this format compared to others. Like, for instance, this could have just aged into like a really boring format potentially, but I think it would have had a lot more potential as players like got used to like terrestrialization, saw more mechanics on how to beat Dondozo and more. So again, I'm just judging for the format of what it was and a slight potential of like what it could have been, instead of like, you know, like just using a month of data, because I think we could maybe say like, oh, like the early parts of all these formats could have potentially been a lot better than like the 3 months or like the 6 months sometimes of like how the format actually was. So that's why I'm like hesitant, because even though it was like a good month, I wouldn't say like, you know, it could have aged like spoiled wine, for instance, or I don't know what that phrase is, but yeah. So I'm gonna put Regulation A here for now. I'm gonna put Regulation A in B tier for now. And for those of you wondering like, oh, what happens if Regulation A comes back now? I mean, again, like a lot of things change with DLC, and because of like, okay, DLC movesets, like we'll probably see stuff like Scale Shot Dragonite be a thing now, because it can definitely be really strong in the format. There's also like some move tutors that could affect the regulation in general. I think it would actually make a big change, because I think Scale Shot Dragonite is pretty strong, like just generally. So definitely could affect Regulation A. There's like a few other stuff that could happen, I think, with egg moves as well. I can't really think of any super big ones off the top of my head, but in general, like I don't think it'd be crazy changing, but like there would be pretty significant ones, right? Like Scale Shot Dragonite in a lot of early regulations would have changed a lot, right? So I do think that that is something to keep in mind here. As yeah, like of course, if we get any of the old formats, for instance, and if we played in like an upcoming month, for example, yeah, there's going to be changes. So just want to keep that in mind. I still think it would probably be an okay format, but again, like I could be very wrong on this, because again, we only have very early data and we have very little of that data. So Regulation A going to B tier for now. Then we have Regulation B, and Regulation B was basically Regulation A, the standard the standard Pokemon that were allowed in Scarlet and Violet, the base game, alongside adding the Paradox Pokemon. So this format was pretty interesting because it added, of course, like some really big staples, Fluttermane, Iron Hands, and all of those good Pokemon. Of course, didn't have like the later ones like Gouging Fire and Raging Bolt, but I mean, it's still like a lot of the list did go pretty much twist the format here. So let's get into Regulation B. It was only for 2 months. Again, I still have no idea why. And as you can see, there's a lot more tournaments here in Regulation B. So starts off with Orlando. Wolf ends up winning with a Parish team featuring this Parish song Screamtail and Arcanine. Was really cool to see, because Screamtail was pretty much written off basically for the early parts, a lot of players ranked Screamtail as a pretty bad Pokemon in general, but then Wolf ends up going with like a really cool speed booster energy set, and it was just able to outspeed like a ton of Pokemon, go for the Encores or Disables, and yeah, just be super threatening where it was just really hard to stop the Screamtail. So that was really cool. Then, of course, Dondozo makes a comeback. Ashton Cox ended up getting second place with Roy Moon and Brute Bonnet as well. Brute Bonnet was actually a pretty decent pick in this regional. And even though it wasn't like really highly ranked for the most part, like Brute Bonnet actually made a pretty big appearance. I actually used Brute Bonnet myself at this tournament, and unfortunately was one game away from making it to top cut. Because if you don't know, like a lot of the early tournaments in Gen 9 were 10 round Swiss regionals day one, and then moved on to a top 32 bracket afterward. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool to see. You got like the Dondozo stuff. You have James Evans with a Gothitelle trap team with the Great Tusk, as well as the Iron Bundle, Sylveon, more Dondozo, hyper offense as Tailwind hyper offense from Amelia Forest, which was a really cool one with Glamour especially. We have Toller Webb also running like a Tailwind offense team that combined with the Shadow Tag Gothitelle, more Dondozo again, more Dondozo again. And then this team was okay. This combination, the fact that it was like Dondozo plus the size spam was always frustrating to play, because it was like into the armor size spam and or the Dondozo Tatsugiri, and like you had to play very specific, because like if you get the lead wrong, you're in a bad spot, because like you could lead like a Moongus, for example, to help out against the Dondozo, but a lot of those things were just pretty bad into armored entities. So yeah, it was just always a fun guessing game there, am I right? And as you can see, it was two of those teams. Then we have like more trapping team. We have size spam once again with Stone Journer. And yeah, more Tailwind, more offensive teams in general. And yeah, like the Paradox Pokemon definitely shift. Again, Brute Bonnet was actually like a very surprising pick that like a lot of players brought. And it was pretty interesting to see. But yeah, a lot more offensive teams in general, and it was pretty cool to see. Also, yeah, you could also bubble top 32 with a 8-2 record. I almost forget about that sometimes. What the times were back then. But yeah, like I think it was like a lot of regulation A teams again combined with, you know, some of the Paradox Pokemon that made it stronger. Not really too much to say. I mean, it's a very similar trend for the most part. I think the fact that you were able to have, of course, like really good fairy coverage with Fluttermane, the Iron Hands, ridiculous Pokemon. That Pokemon was absolutely absurd. It was just really hard to damage at the time. Great Tusk was incredible. Having the ground coverage was just super valuable. As I said before, like it made like the Garganical stuff like a lot worse, because you have Headlong Rush that can cover for both Poison Terra and non-Terra. So yeah, like Garganical kind of died down, although we still see it like a little bit. It was able to get top 32, for example. And yeah, like for the most part was pretty much, I don't think any super crazy changes, but as we'll see, like it kind of ages, right? Then we have the Oceania International Championship, and yeah, I mean, like a lot of stuff. I mean, we see a few changes, a few optimizations. We have Gavin end up winning with a Rain team of Palafin Rain. Baxcalibur was a cool twist because of the fact that it was able to do quite a bit of damage with that Icicle Spear and cover for the grass types like the Amoonguss and the Dragon types as well. Then we have Alberto getting second place. That involved the Screens Klefki alongside his Choice Scarf Garchomp he really liked to run alongside the Corviknight. Dondozo stuff with like Fluttermane and Iron Moth with the Speed Booster Acid Spray stuff was able to do well and get top 4. Roghov ended up using like this Dragon Dance Roost Roaring Moon alongside like some setup with Redirection Mousehold alongside this Covert Cloak Nasty Plot Golden Go. Covert Cloak for like Snarls, but also like for the Salt Cure from Garganical. And it was pretty cool. Yeah, like of course the Intimidate. You had the Fake Out support with Iron Hands and the Redirection with Mousehold, and you also had like Icy Wind Speed control with the Iron Bundle. Then you also had again some interesting stuff with the like I know I skipped Collins team, which was pretty much like a more offensive team for the most part. Like again, Choice Specs Flutter Main with Focus Sash Great Tusk, Assault Vest King Gambit. Just use Iron Bundle as like the speed control alongside Tailwind Dragonite instead of like the priority Tailwind like a Talonflame or Whimsicott, and then had the Friend Guard Mousehold to be able to take attacks and redirect them. And then we had Alfredo with like his really, really offensive team, which was like a fast version of Size Spam alongside Iron Bundle, like Flutter Mane and Great Tusk, more Dundozo stuff. Chepa actually using his Regulation A team pretty much, except adding the Arcanine instead of the Meowscarada for this event. This team late could have passed as a Regulation A team, but yep, was able to use in Regulation B. You didn't need a Paradox Pokemon guaranteed to do well. Then we have like this setup Annihilate Mousehole team from Thomas that was able to do well and finish again in top 8. And of course, like Alex Underhill piloting what Emilio brought to the regional before, the Orlando Regional Championship. We see like again more like Icy Wind speed control with like the Iron Bundle that was just fast with a bit more offense. And we kind of just see like Iron Bundle was a like really strong Pokemon at this time because Speed Booster Iron Bundle was just so hard to outspeed. Even Pokemon under Tailwind, like this Pokemon was absolutely ridiculous for its time. Then we have like some slow stuff with like Organical stuff with Mungus and Iron Hands that was just really bulky. We saw like Perish Dundozo actually be a thing from Zachary Thornburg. I actually ran pretty much the same 6 with him, and it was really cool because you could Perish Song Tatsugiri, then you would go for like a Psych Up with Sylveon because like how it worked. For some reason, Dundozo keeps the boost. Tatsugiri faints in Dundozo's mouth. I don't get why that's the case, but it does. And then you would go for the self psych up with the Sylveon, or just having a partner next to the Dundozo was just really broken. Like it was insanely broken. The fact that you got Dundozo and a partner, so you could have 2 attacks at the same time with a boosted Dundozo, absolutely crazy. Then you have stuff like more Dundozo stuff, more like offensive stuff with like the Iron Bundle in general. Like I was not too much else to see, but like it was a pretty interesting format for the most part. Like you had again a lot of different stuff that you could run, a lot of Tailwind, a lot of Iron Bundle, a lot of Rain, a lot of Dozo. I mean, that's just how it was evolving over time. But yeah, like again, there were several tournaments going into this. Like we could go at more regionals, and yeah, like we see different iterations, like Gothitelle ended up becoming more popular with the Shadow Tag, and Hard Trick Room still being able to pilot around. We have again like Tailwind offense this time. Iron Juggles is taking the like Talonflames. You have really cool like just immediate speed control with the booster energy, and yeah, it was just really cool to see there. Or it wasn't booster energy. Oh no, it was booster energy, right? Yeah, it was Sash Bundle this time, which was different then. Yep, I had a feeling I remember it was speed booster Iron Juggles, and it was bulkier than Talonflame and could like again slow down stuff with Snarl, which was pretty good into like Golden Go. Like it'd still be able to outspeed quite a bit and take the attack a lot better, which was nice for survivability. And yeah, then we had stuff like again more Dundozo, more like fast balance kind of teams, more setup stuff in general. Maybe you would see a bit of stall here or there, but for the most part, like a lot of this was just Paradox and good Pokemon. Not really, I think, too much to say here. And trying to think, is there anything super crazy going on? I mean, we saw like Kutesh running this crazy Sun Pro Synthesis team with Belly Bolt, which was cool to see. But yeah, like there are of course going to be some like odd picks here or there that was able to succeed, stuff like Saralage, stuff like Gardevoir. We saw some rare Paradox Pokemon from time to time, and yeah, like I mean in general, I think it was again a cool format. Like I don't know what to say. Like the thing is, I have to go through 8 of these. The meta did kind of adapt. I think people kind of realized Palafin's still really good without Rain, and people would just run Palafin instead and not have to rely on the Rain mode. And I felt like it was pretty good. Like Palafin balance with Palafin, Iron Hands, Amoonguss, and Arcanine kind of started taking over. The Tailwind offense teams kind of started being optimized a bit. And then we just see again like just a lot of cool different Pokemon for the time period. And yeah, I just don't know what to really say more than that, because as you notice, it's just like slight adjustments. Paradox Pokemon really took over, and yeah, like we see a lot of just different teams in general. Like I think it was a cool format. Like I actually really do like Regulation B for the most part. It's I think one of the higher tiers for the Gen 9 stuff in general. Like, I'm not going again super in depth, and I'm trying to remember a bit as I go along because there are some details I might even just misremember. But for the most part, I think like this format was just really cool to see. Sun unfortunately ended up becoming popular later on with like Torkoal Lilligant. Not my favorite to deal with, but yeah, like you would just see some really cool random mons there. But Paradox Pokemons were just again the thing because their stats were just super absurd for what they were, right? And I don't know, I'd say I really did enjoy this format in general, as I again just showcasing like the teams you would see throughout the regulation. But I don't know, I think even though Paradox Pokemon super changed it, and of course it was like pretty much you really want to run a Paradox mon for the most part. Were they necessary? No, there are like maybe a few teams out there that didn't run Paradox Pokemon, but for the most part, like it was super solid. Like I don't think anything was super crazy or oppressive to really think of at the time. Like I think all of them were good. I wouldn't say like it was crazy. I mean, like maybe Fluttermane and Iron Hands as individual Pokemon were a bit absurd. Dondozo was still annoying, but of course, like there's less Dondozo now, mainly because of like the haze stuff in general, other than maybe like again Parish Dozo and what would later to be on. I think it started like around Vancouver was like these T spikes with the Dondozo from Glamour, and then those stall teams were a bit annoying to deal with. Granted, it was playable because Haze Palafin was picking up a lot more, and it's harder to deal with it, especially if you run the Terra Grass Palafin. But yeah, like for the most part, like I think just really cool teams in general. And I think Regulation B was solid. I think Regulation B, do I like it more than Regulation A though? I think that's the question. If I was to rank Regulation B compared to Regulation A, realistically, I think that little bit of offensive capabilities, and I think like having a few more different of those types, like the fairy, which was super solid because Mouse Ape was a little bit annoying. And again, I'm judging it for what it was. The fact that we had more knowledge of like how to play against Dondozo, like Palafin was used more as a counter. I think I like it more than Regulation A, again because I can only judge Regulation A really. I only add a little bit of theory to what I'm thinking of. Like Regulation A could have been better, of course, if there was less Dozo and people knew how to play against it at the time. Regulation B was just more evolved. I think I'd put in A. I'd probably put it, it's either higher B or A. I think I'll put it for A for now because I could see some formats definitely moving this lower, but in general, like I thought Regulation B was more developed than A, and it kind of showed. And I think like again, I don't think the changes were too bad to really mind. I really think the Paradox Pokemon, you know, Fluttermane was absurd. The what's it called, stuff like Iron Hands, super hard to get rid of. But in general, like I felt like for the most part it wasn't like anything crazy oppressive, and we got to see some really cool team variations, I think, as we, you know, the metagame evolved, right? Like I think that's kind of thing, even though it was a 2-month period, like it's still a really cool 2-month period because you saw like a lot of different stuff win, right? You saw Rain, you saw Parish, you saw Sun, you saw like Tailwind HO. You just see like a lot of things end up winning here. So I think Regulation A could have potential, but I think Regulation B, for like how much shifts there were, like I think a lot of Pokemon were viable back then, and there were a lot of niches that were undiscovered that were brought and ended up performing super well. Yeah, like I think Regulation B super solid, and I like it a bit more than A because I think having a little bit more of those stats actually ended up helping in a lot of cases break through more of the defensive teams that were just a little bit harder to deal with in Regulation A. Then we have Regulation C, and Regulation C is basically Regulation B. So basically base game Scarlet Violet with the Paradox Pokemon, and then they just add 4 Pokemon, which is the Ruin Pokemon, Chien Pao, Chi-Yu, Ting-Lu, and Wo-Chien. Although realistically it was like 3 Pokemon that really matter because no one really used Wo-Chien, but yeah, the other Pokemon were a factor. So there were April, May, June. Yeah, so it was 3 months for this regulation. I don't know why they did 1, 2, and 3, but sure, they did. They did it for some random reason, and I guess we'll just go into it. I mean, basically, you get like more of the same cons for Regulation B, but you had a ruin Pokemon. That's basically how it went. Like Chien Pao really changed quite a bit of stuff because Sword of Ruin allowed like way more offensive capabilities with like how powerful it could be, especially with like extreme speed stuff. Like Dragonite ended up becoming way more stronger just because of the extreme speed, even though we don't see it as much. Dragapult was able to take more advantage because you have like Choice Banded Dragapult next to Chien Pao, really able to put on some offense. Of course, it made Sun really powerful as well. So yeah, as you can see here, like I mean, Wo-Chien technically had made some impact, but really no one really realistically ran the Wo-Chien. Even though there was 3 Wo-Chiens in this Australian regional, this was not like representative of like the entire regulation format, but I thought it was just funny to see. It is funny to see. There were 4 in top 16. What were we doing? But yeah, like there's like Chi-Yu offensive stuff, but again, like a lot of these teams you could say, oh, it's regulation B or A, and then you have like these ruin Pokemon maybe added. You could say the same thing about B into A. How much did the ruin Pokemon impact this regulation though? I mean, very much. There are a lot of compositions that did very much appreciate it. And again, I'm gonna kind of just scroll around. As you can see, like Dragapult plus Chien Pao really made an impact here offensively. Again, the Chien Pao plus Palafin as well. And again, the speed tiers kind of get annoying here because you had the Flutter Mane, and of course Flutter Mane speeds were already pretty difficult, but then you have stuff like Dragapult and Chien Pao that ended up becoming way more popular. And yeah, like speed ended up going quite a bit. Like they went quite a bit up. And let me just say, Flutter Mane speed tiers were already pretty annoying because like you would have so many different levels of like EV spreads with the Flutter Mane in Regulation B, and then they really got absurd in Regulation C, where a lot of them were running very fast timid for like Adamant Pow and Adamant or Modest Flutters. Yeah, it was pretty insane back then. And then again, just adding more power or like a slower mode with the Tinglu. The Tinglu was kind of annoying, but I think everyone kind of knows the viral stuff about Tinglu. And one of my least favorite things about Regulation C was the early part of Regulation C, which I am going to play now.
This Trident gets another one! Fiona, stop! No way! On to the Arcanine! That is all KOs in this game have been Fissure.
If I'm not mistaken, there were 3 Fissures hit in this individual game. By the way, this was a game 3, and the winner advanced in the top cut guaranteed. There's also like the viral clip I could also show you as another example.
Fissure. If you want to use Fissure, you listen to me right now. You might be thinking like, let me tell you, you listen to me, okay? It depends on what kind of person you are. Are you somebody who says, I want to win the game because I'm lucky or because like I'm the best Fissure player? Or do you want to leave your fate up to chance? Now, I do want to say that Fissure is a little bit more skill-based than I think people give it credit for. Like, it's not just like, oh, I lead Tinglu, I click Fissure, whatever. Like, the players who are best at utilizing Fissure are the ones who are putting themselves in a position where Tinglu is not threatened and has multiple chances to get it off. So it's not like just like a luck-based move, but still it's a move where your fate is out of your hands. And for me personally, I don't like it. I don't respect it.
I'm just gonna say I really don't like Fissure Tinglu. And I don't think I've ever heard Wolf really give that strong of a complaint in a while. I don't think I've ever heard like Wolf super complain about something in a format, but or that strongly, but yeah. I think it was. Granted, I do think that of course Pokemon's a game of odds. Of course, there aren't like super strong coverage options that you really want Tinglu on this time, and you know it can be optimal in some cases if you want a way to break through Amoonguss ways to pressure like the stall stuff like Organical. But man, was it just annoying to face. No hate to the players, but God, that thing was annoying to deal with. So yeah, it did add quite a bit of RNG element. Also, mainly because there weren't that many flying types or ground immunities in Regulation I. You really didn't want to run Flying Terra. Like there were only a few Pokemon that really liked Flying Terra for the most part. So you weren't just running a random Flying Terra for it. Like literally the fact that you had to run Fissure with Tinglu meant like some Amoongus's actually did run Terra Flying just so they don't get hit by the Fissure, which was super dumb because water was just generally more optimal, but like that's how strong of an impact like it had at points. But yeah, we saw stuff like Tinglu create more of like defensive lines because it was like good because it allowed you to like slow down Fluttermane's pacing, and Chi, of course, like a really strong Pokemon. Tinglu was one of the better answers to it in general. So that is the reason why you would run Tinglu. And yeah, like a lot of these teams, again, like more evolutions as we saw time go on for Regulation C, where you didn't even see all the rune Pokemon on some teams at some points because like it wasn't really necessary to, but a lot of teams just added a one because of course it did impact like a lot of like how it went on, right? So as we'll see, like EUIC, like Tinglu was a pretty big impactor here. Like it was able to make finals for both players. The Palafin Balance team really did appreciate it did Tinglu because it was like a great answer into Fluttermane that could put in a lot of offensive pressure because it was really hard to resist the Fluttermanes in general. The Dundozos really liked playing that mind game with the offensive like capabilities, like Chiyu with the Dundozo Tatsugiri because the Beads of Ruin offensive capabilities, or you had that Dundozo Tatsugiri that could switch in and just do a lot of offensive pressure. Like Chiyu would be able to threaten all the grass types, Nuka-Mungus, and more. So yeah, like again, a lot of these builds I think we could say are pretty similar to the Regulation B. I wouldn't say like a lot of them were super changing, but you know, some Pokemon got better, right? Because of the Rune Pokemon getting better. Like the Dragonite, the Dragapult definitely did appreciate a lot of these Pokemon. The fact that it was just better because the sort of Ruin activation or the what's it called, the Beads of Ruin. So yeah, I'd say like it definitely appreciated there. But yeah, there's like so many events for the most part. Like I don't think it was like a crazy evolution throughout. Like we saw a few changes for the most part, but I really wouldn't say like, oh, these are crazy changes that went on. Like, you know, there are Pokemon that shifted here or there for the most part, but across the board, I wouldn't say the teams went through like crazy evolutions compared to like how it was for Betas A. I think like C didn't have as much of those evolutions for the most part. So yeah, like a lot of these, again, kind of just Regulation B teams. The Rune Pokemon kind of strengthened it a bit. A few Pokemon got better, a few Pokemon got worse. But yeah, like for the most part, like a lot of these, I wouldn't say is super crazy. I mean, maybe the Orthworm team, because Orthworm became a very more prevalent because of like the Tinglu that was created by like David Kutesh. Had a really cool team that was able to get day 2 at UIC with the Beads of or not the Beads of Ruin, the Vessel of Ruin, helping the Orthworm, which has really low special defense, Earth Eater, Earthquake, Shed Tail into the multi-scale Dragonite. Like this was a really cool team. Like this was like one of the really cool teams that came out of I think Regulation C for the most part. And yeah, like but otherwise like that's a team that probably wouldn't have existed without like Tinglu, and it really was like a huge game changer for it. Otherwise, like the rest were like, okay, Pokemon that were pretty decent that just became stronger because of like Chien-Pao and more. And I guess he did have more answers to like Golden Go, and he had like answers to Dragon types further with Chien-Pao. Chi-Yu was just able to blow stuff up, having an extra like a better fire type, because fire types were pretty scarce I think during this time period, because otherwise it'd be like Talonflame and Arcanine, but they're more like Talonflame's not really a damage dealer in the format, and sometimes they wouldn't even run Flare Blitz, and Arcanine could go either way, but most likely a defensive one. So having an offensive fire type was pretty cool. That wasn't like Torkoal. And yeah, like as we see throughout me scrolling through, I mean, I wouldn't really say like, oh, there anything crazy here that really just came out of having these Rune Pokemon. It's just like, okay, the Rune Pokemon got added, a bit more offense capabilities. Inglu kind of helped out with maybe like controlling Fluttermane damage output a bit and calming that down. But for the most part, like again, you didn't need the Rune Pokemon. For instance, like Emilio able to win the Fresno Regional Championship without a single Rune Pokemon. This was literally a team we could run in Regulation B, and it would have been successful. So there were some teams that definitely appreciated it. Again, there were actually no Rune Pokemon in the finals here, actually. There were no Rune Pokemon in the top 3 here. So it wasn't necessary, but it did really amplify both offense and then annoying stuff with Tinglu, I'd say. Again, Wo-Chien wasn't really common. Until maybe like when we got to it. I think we were getting into a time period where Tinglu and Dozo, you have 2 Pokemon that can get access to Fisher, the Sandtomb Yawn stuff started evolving. I think this would have been pretty much a huge headache to deal with. Like this would have been an absolutely huge headache to deal with. So That is pretty much what I'd say for Regulation C. Where is it going on a tier list? Because Regulation C, I think it was way less enjoyable, at least for me personally, because I will include some of my own bias and enjoyment from these formats. I think Regulation C, this belongs in. Oh man, what would I want to say? I think it could honestly, for me, just because of how much I didn't enjoy it as much, I could see it being the D tier. But I think it's a C tier realistically, like objectively. I think it's a C tier. I think it's C tier. I think it's C tier. I didn't like this regulation that much. I thought like Chien-Pao was dumb. I thought I just don't like the ruin abilities and how they operate. Like, I think the offensive ones were a lot better than the defensive ones in general. Like the sort of ruin calcs were absolutely disgusting on some mons, like Terra Normal Extreme Speed, a Choice Banded Dragapult, like really amplified it, I think, for the most part. Some of the mind games he would play with Dundoza I felt was more frustrating than the ones he would play in A and B. Like Fisher Tinglu, let me just say NIC 2023 was probably one of the most stressful tournaments that I've ever played. I think I had like 2 or 3 opponents at least. And I mean at least. I know there was minimum 2 from what I can remember, but where they were going into town spamming Fisher against me because it's the only way they could break through my Palafin in rain was they had to spam Fisher. And I had a Pelipper too, and even then I was sweating every time I saw the Fisher, man. I just don't like it. Like, I just did not like the interactions I think I had in Regulation C. Granted, I think a lot of teams I had in Regulation C I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I just felt like it was really annoying to cover a bunch. So yeah, I think I'd put Regulation C and C again. I think it'd be pretty interesting, and I feel like it would have gone worse, honestly, after the Dundozo plus the Tinglu came up. Like, that defensive core is super annoying to break through if anything realistically. The Yawn, the Sand Tomb, the Vessel of Ruin, how physically defensive both of those Pokemon are. Like, I think it would have gotten worse. I think it genuinely gets worse if it comes back. And we have like stuff like Scale Shot again that becomes relevant. Like, and I feel like Scale Shot would actually be a good move because it was really hard to just get rid of POW in one shot, right? Scale Shot would actually be able to threaten POW now. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan of it. So that's Regulation C. Regulation D. For some reason, Pokemon never do this again. It was our World Championship, and the first event for Regulation D was the World Championship. I have no idea why they did this. They gave us the home mons. So basically it was Regulation C, Paradox Pokemon, base game Scarlet Violet, and Ruin Pokemon, and then the home Pokemon got added. Pokemon from Pokemon Home, which means you could transfer some Pokemon from older games. And Urshifu, baby, everyone's favorite Pokemon. Everyone's favorite Pokemon, Urshifu, a Pokemon that, ignores, protects, and detect entirely. And then stuff like Landorus, your favorite legends like Tornadus, Cresselia that got Lunar Blessing. You got some of the Pokemon from Legends of Arceus, like the Ursaluna, Hisuian Arcanine, Basculegion. I mean, there are a lot of broken Pokemon in this format, realistically. And I mean a lot of broken Pokemon in this format. Like, it was like the World Championship. These are the teams that made it out day one, by the way. Just to showcase here, this was only day one, and then day two is the, again, first event. And then, like this team that Japan Balance ended up winning with was pretty common. But yeah, otherwise, like, you would see some interesting builds for the most part. But again, for the most part, I think a lot of players did not enjoy like having these legends and Urshifu and all that. So it's pretty interesting though. I felt like the format was definitely a unique twist here. Like, I'm not like the biggest hater of Regulation C, even though I didn't do that well at this ratio, but that's a different story. Like, I like have a different story of like how this Worlds was the worst Worlds ever run, and outside factors influenced my my performance, because I thought my team was fine, and if I was and that outside incidents that wasn't related to the actual game didn't happen, it would have worked out. But yeah, that's a rant for another time. Maybe I'll talk about that in the Worlds recap episode. But yeah, like I have a Twitter thread about it if anyone really wants to scroll down, like go down to 2023, I suppose, if they're really interested. But yeah, this World Championship definitely was sour. But for the most part, I thought meta wise, like it was fine. I don't dislike it as much as other players do. Granted, like I don't think many players enjoy Urshifu, but like when everyone's using Urshifu for the most part, like you kind of stop complaining and you just deal with it. I think that's kind of like the vibe here. And yeah, like that was the first event. Then we can move on to 2024 because we had a bit longer to go with this. It's kind of funny because it was like from Worlds, like it started in June, or not June, July, but July, there are no events in July. Then it was August, which is the Lady World Championship, and then just September. So we had like 3 regional events for this one, which was Pittsburgh. And as you can see, like a lot of legends end up kind of taking over for the most part. We saw maybe like a few different changes here, but yeah, like I don't really like this was fine for the most part. I felt like, again, like the thing is we get to like Paradox Pokemon that are super strong plus the legends. Like all the stat totals just got super raised compared to what it was previously. And yeah, like again, I think the format's okay for the most part, but yeah, like again, scrolling through the teams, I feel like people will say this was a boring period because again, home mons wasn't the most exciting. Seeing all these not restricted legendary Pokemon, but like these other legendary Pokemon just take over. Like a lot of players didn't like it. Like there were some teams that were fine, right? Like even the Regulation C balance team for the most part was still able to do well at like Worlds as well. Like Marco Fiera, I think, also used that Regulation C team, if I'm not mistaken, to get top 16 at Worlds. It wasn't necessary to like use all these absurd broken Pokemon, but it's really hard not to use like the good stuff, right? Urshifu, Heatran, Cresselia, like all of those mons were just super powerful. So yeah, I'd say from it's funny because like only Torn really got it, but Torn Tailwind, like Torn was just such a good Tailwind setter. Like it's better than Talon because you don't have to be a full HP to commit the Prankster Tailwind. And yeah, it's like bulkier than Talon and Whimsicott. So yeah, like Torn ended up changing like the hyper offense Tailwind sort of landscape. And you know, we saw like several hyper offensive teams. I think the coolest team again, and I think it's like one of the coolest teams I think throughout all of Generation 9 was the top 16 Worlds team by Emilio Forbes. You might have seen through me scrolling. It's the team I ended up bringing to Pittsburgh. And I think that team is just so sick, man. Like, I think this team is just sick. Like, the Bramblegast with the Tornaz, Urshifu, Chiyu, Fluttermane, and Golden Go. That hyper offense team, like Bramblegast, able to shine because of the tail one from Torn and making this Pokemon really viable. And Bramblegast really good into like Water Urshifu with the Power Whip. And yeah, like I thought it was just super cool there to see. So yeah. Where would I rank it though? I would say Regulation D. I don't know, it's weird because it's like a 2-month period really, but I think a lot of players won't like it as much, mainly because like if you did well at Worlds, you probably liked it. If you didn't do well at Worlds, you probably were like whatever, or didn't like it for the most part. For me, I don't like how they did it where Worlds was the first format for this regulation because it made it really stressful to build and more secretive. So where would I say I rank this? I think for me, I like it better than D personally because I had more fun playing this than C. But I don't think it's like a really good format, realistically. Kind of fine for the most part. I think it's like either here or maybe here. It's either high C or low B. And I think it's low B. Like really low B. It's like borderline. It's hard to say again because there are a lot less events. So it wasn't like it evolved super much. So it's hard to kind of like say. I still think there were probably a lot of comps that were could have been more explored here, but I probably put it C. It's just like not enough data for me to really say, I think, for the most part. And I think A is still probably better than B for the most part, but yeah, that's where I would put it for now. Again, I can move them if I want to towards the end, but yeah. Then we have Regulation E. This was the DLC, so we ended up getting the DLC, which was the first one with man, I'm so used to the Isle of Armor, but it's not the Isle of Armor. What is it? It's not the Blueberry Academy, because that's part 2. What was part 1? It's the Ogerpon one. I'll just say that. I don't remember. I haven't played that DLC in forever, so just know it's like the first part of the DLC. And we go to Regulation F, or not Regulation F, Regulation E, and yeah, that's some good stuff. But no, in general, like, I don't know, it was weird. Like the first couple of weeks of this were really weird because for some reason everyone dropped Torn Urshifu, which was like the strongest in Regulation D, but people decided, hey, we're not using Urshifu Tornadus. And then me and Luca were in the car ride together for like 8 hours and said, why are people not using Torn Ursh? It's kind of funny because this regional was like last minute, because I got invited to go into a car ride to just because Peoria is really expensive because it's a small airport, and come to this region. And I'm like, sure, I'll definitely do it, because like it was like what, $100 to fly out and then drive, instead of like, I think it would have been like a $500-600 if I just want to go straight to Peoria. So definitely a cool one. Shout outs to my boy David Mancuso who made this regional happen, because if I didn't, I would not have been a regional championship back then, or a champion in Gen 9 then. So yeah, like ended up making this team late the night of, because I had like 50 teams that I was just exploring, and I didn't like a single one of them. So I ended up making this one on the craft, but it ended up being really good. Torn Ursh was just broken. People didn't realize that. Like, as you can see, no one brought Torn Ursh. For some reason, no one really brought Torn Ursh. I don't get why. But yeah, like this was the Ogerpon meta, and Ogerpon was a huge shift to the meta because it really allowed some cool stuff. One, Follow Me. You didn't really have many good Follow Me Pokemon in the previous formats. You had Rage Powder, but Follow Me is just really nice. And it's also like a natural spore immunity. The way Ogerpons worked as well, you had like a specially defensive water one, which was cool. Great into Urshifu. You had the fire one as well, which was more offensive. And yeah, like this Pokemon was a huge threat. Then you had the rock one was sturdy, and then the grass one, like all of them I think did okay for what it was. You also had like the trio, although really only Okidoki was really good. Pheasantipity and Munkidori were not good. But yeah, Okidoki had an okay spot for the most part. And then you had like some Pokemon again from the DLC. Pokemon like Dusclops. Blood Moon Ursaluna was introduced, but it wasn't as good back then because of course Urshifu was like one of the best Pokemon in the format back then. But like a few players did attempt it for the first regional. And a lot of them, having another grass type was always nice. And again, a physical fire offensive that isn't like just rely on like Arcanine, I thought was like really nice to have here. You would see some of the compositions for the most part. You would also get Sinistra, which I think is also really cool Trickermon with Hospitality, which was also really neat, I think, for the time period. And there were some builds that you could go with that. And I think Regulation E kind of explored a lot more building in the case, kind of took stuff from Reg D, implemented some stuff with the DLC. And I thought the meta was actually just really cool. I mean, granted, you would see as like we'll go on, like a lot of the top teams, like, but for instance, like this team ended up winning Sacramento by Michael Zhang, ended up featuring like Sand, Hisuian Arcanine, which was really neat, and not even a single Ogerpon for the most part. Alolan Ninetales was super neat because of the snow weather, and having Aurora Veil was super neat in general. Like Wheezing stuff was also pretty cool with Roaring Moon, even though, when did it get changed, man? I don't remember when it got changed, but yeah, it's definitely a cool thing there. And yeah, like a lot of comms, it's not like crazy, but there were a few, I think, interesting comms from the time period. But as you'll see, like throughout like the future tournaments, like take a note at the first places of these tournaments coming up. But yeah, like I think, there were some cool mons and cool team options, but I think there was like one team that really just stood above the rest. there's like a team that kind of stood up above the rest for the most part, as the Tailwind offensive team with Torn, Ursh, like as you see, like Ogerpon wasn't even technically necessary. Like Ogerpon was not even necessary for it. But yeah, it's actually funny because you know, like Hisuian Arcanine, Urshifu, Tornadus was just so strong back then. But you know, we got some cool stuff like Regieleki, he was able to do well with Wellspring Ogerpon at the Latin American International Championship. I forget, was Rillaboom Grassy Glide back then? Yeah, Rillaboom got access to Grassy Glide, which was different because in Regulation D it didn't get Grassy Glide, and then in Regulation E it got Grassy Glide. Not sure exactly why they did that, but that was a thing. But yeah, for the most part, like you would see a few different compositions for the most part in Regulation E. I think like a cool one was like the Regidrago stuff with Follow Me Ogerpon. I remember it was Dunlop. I don't remember which regional it was out of these, but I probably either showed it or I missed it. But for the most part, like again, like you know, it's Regulation D for the most part. There's some mixtures here, but I felt like again some cool here and there brings. Was it? As you could see, like this team was just so dominant back then. Like the combo of like Torn, Urshifu, Hisuian Arcanine, and then one of the ghost types was absolutely absurd back then. But you know, you would get some interesting stuff. Yeah, this is the Regidrago team. The Regidrago team, I think, from Nils was super sick. The Jamie Boyd ended up doing really well with like the supportive Roaring Moon with like Tailwind and Breaking Swipe, and I thought that was like a really cool set because I ended up picking up later on towards it. And then he had stuff like this Galarian Articuno, which I don't remember how well it stuck around. I know like the Roaring Moon was definitely the main stapler, like you would see that more often coming up, but yeah, I don't think the Articuno really showcased that much. But yeah, I just as you can see, I think the top tier team was kind of just broken mons in general. You didn't even need the DLC for the most part, but you know, there's some cool stuff. I mean, for San Antonio, the final event, like it didn't win, which was nice, but yeah, like I think for the most part, like you know, you saw more team diversity than you saw in Regulation D. You saw like you know, less Heatrans and less Cresselia stuff over time, and I think Ogerpon was a good Pokemon to add just in general. Like a bunch of different Ogerpons were able to be successful. I think Regulation E is one of the formats I actually enjoy more than any of the formats. Like even Regulation E, for example, I brought Brambleghast to LAC, which was the big Regulation E event, and I enjoyed the heck out of that. Like I didn't even need the Ogerpon, but like it was still like powerful back then. So a lot of the stuff that worked in Reg D worked well in Reg E, but like Reg E introduced like some new comps, especially because of like all the new Pokemon out there, and Ogerpon was good. So I like Regulation E personally. For Scarlet and Violet, I'd probably put it. I put it here. I think I liked it more than B, which is kind of funny, but yeah, I do think I like it more than B personally. But ooh, I mean, this is a tier list based on my personal opinion. I think E is more fun to me than B. I think B generally is a better format, but it could also be because that B evolved more because, you know, players got way better at like handling terrestrialization more, and E was a bit more centralized. Oh, that's tough. You know what? Now I'll put B higher. I'll put B higher, but E could also be like high B tier. Actually, no, I would actually I would put E in high B tier. I would put high. I would put it here. I would put it here. Yeah. Because I do acknowledge it has flaws. I don't think Urshifu is like the funnest Pokemon to deal with either. But yeah, I think Regulation E would be here. I think, yeah, that's where I would put it. I think Regulation E is fine for what it's worth. Like, again, I don't think it's like 2 tiers above for Regulation D. And I do think Regulation D has its flaws. But yeah, Regulation E, like, I think it's overhated because, again, first event of the for Worlds was and I don't think many people liked the super strong Pokemon that were brought, but I thought it was fine for the most part. I think Regulation E is like B here. I think I like it more than A personally, mainly because I had more fun. Like Brambleghast was fun, man. I'm just gonna say that Brambleghast team during Regulation D, Regulation E, one of the most fun teams I've ever played in Scarlet Violet. Like I think it's a top 3 regionals team for me easily. So Yeah, I put it here. Regulation F. Regulation F. This is the world's, or not world's, what am I saying? This is the DLC with the Blueberry Academy, and it also features Raging Bolt, which a lot of players will complain about. Like, I'm going to showcase and Gouging Fire, I suppose. Like, those are really the big mons that really came out of this regulation. I wouldn't say it's like, I don't think there was anything super different. Oh yeah, there was Iron Crown Side Spam that came out of this too. Regulation F. Like, I'm scrolling down trying to remember some of the stuff about this, because it isn't like, I think, too crazy of a difference from Regulation E, but like, of course it did shift a lot because Raging Bolt was such a strong Pokemon, right? It didn't really showcase, I think, for the first two, even though it won Portland. I don't think the Raging Bolt showed how crazy it was, but I was surprised not many players used Raging Bolt. As you can see, not many players at all used Raging Bolt for the first couple of events. Like, that Pokemon is insane, man. I don't get what people were thinking not using Raging Bolt. That mon was insane. Which is funny because I don't even think I brought Raging Bolt to Charlotte, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, like, but we'll see later on how powerful Raging Bolt can really become. But I think, like, for the first couple events, players were just kind of utilizing, like, you know, similar teams that they were using previously for the most part. Yeah, Raging Bolt was super strong. I think everyone always talks about this. Like, as I scroll the teams, I'll mention, like, everyone just always complains about the Calm Mind Raging Bolt with leftovers, and it was called Japan Balance because a lot of Japanese players were using this one team with like Urshifu, Rillaboom, Incineroar, a Calm Mind Raging Bolt, and then it'd be like Chien Pao, and then the last Pokemon would probably vary sometimes. Sometimes you would even see a Moongus over the Rilla slot, but yeah, like, Raging Bolt was just so absurd at times. And yeah, like, you would see some stuff here and there. Like, again, this is kind of like Regulation E where we kicked off, but Raging Bolt ended up changing a lot. Like, Tailwind offense, especially like Tornadus Urshifu, really went down in usage, or not down in usage, but it's a lot harder to just like snowball teams with Tornadus plus Urshifu because Raging Bolt was a thing. But yeah, like, you would see some shout out teams like Blood Moon, Ursaluna a bit. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like anything super crazy until like, I think it was EUIC, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm looking through the teams. Oh yeah, one of the things that came out is Snow. Snow was able to win a regional with Articuno in this regulation with Choice Specs Articuno with Blizzard, because it was just really good into like a lot of Pokemon. Yeah, this team was hecka annoying. It was hecka annoying. Aurora Veil made it really hard to KO these Pokemon. Choice Specs Blizzard with Snow Cloak, which Snow Cloak, if you don't know, it increases the evasion, so it's less likely you hit the Articuno. And Articuno is a pretty bulky Pokemon. It's got really good speed def. It's not the best defense, but when you have the Snow defense boost and you get rid of the Flying type, which means you don't have a 4x weakness to Rock, yeah, it goes pretty insane, especially with Intimidate. Yeah, Articuno actually went pretty crazy here. Like, there were literally two in this top 8. It ended up picking up towards the metagame, and yeah, it was definitely one annoying Pokemon to deal with for sure, and it became more of a main staple as like the events went on. Like, I think those are the two big teams that I probably remember this regulation, which were the Snow team and the Japan Balance with Calm Mind Raging Bull. Like, I'd say those are probably like the top ones. Of course, you know, that wasn't all that regulation or this regulation had to offer. We would see some more adaptations of how Gouging Fire ended up changing a lot on this King Gamut kind of stuff, which we ended up seeing later. We see some Tinglu Dundozo combinations with that as well, especially with the Scale Shot Dragonite that ended up picking up at EUIC, which was a big one. And yeah, like, as you can see, Tinglu Dundozo with Gouging Fire, Dragonite, and Chien-Pao. And I think this was the Scale Shot one, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, this is Scale Shot Dragonite, and when it really started picking up, which was a really good call here for this event, because Scale Shot was really powerful with the Howl. Also, I know for those of you who might be like with audio only that is listening to this and like wondering what I'm really showcasing, I think it's just really hard for me to say like a bunch of compositions throughout an entire generation, like only an hour. And I don't want to go like too long into like each regulation because we would be here for like such a long time. So highly recommend, of course, watching the video because it does give the context needed. But I do again say any shout out teams. But yeah, for the most part, it's, again, really similar stuff to what we saw previously. UIC, we had Nils end up doing something with a regulation D team. Like this team would have been viable in regulation D. Well, I guess regulation E. Actually, no, there's no Incineroar. Regulation F provided Incineroar. Incineroar ended up changing like quite a bit of compositions, right? Like this is the team Tim Edwards like was the highest placement of these like Raging Bolt balance teams, and it would often be Urshifu, it'd be Rillaboom, we would see Raging Bolt, Incineroar with like Main, Chien Pao, Ogerpon Heartflame, Landorus Incarnate. Like we would usually see those as like the last two slots, but yeah, it was a super strong one. Yeah, like that was a very popular combination. We saw it, I guess, second place at Vancouver as well. Yeah, it was just really hard to stop. Of course, it's funny because it people will say the argument of like, oh, it never did win an event, but it was a little bit annoying to always face. But I don't think it was like, it was definitely boring interactions in my opinion. Like the mirror was never fun for the most part. And of course, that's like your choice of like using a really strong team and being willing to play the mirror if you use the team. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is kind of overhated, but I don't really see like the benefits here. Like the only thing is, again, Urshifu plus Tornadus became a lot easier to handle because of the fact that Raging Bolt was a Pokemon, right? Like I think that was a pretty big factor to help out against the Tailwind teams, be a little less dominant, which meant a lot more other things could really shine throughout deregulation for the most part. And again, going through the teams, there's not anything I'd say super crazy that's like, oh, other than those two comps. But let me just say, fighting through Snow and Blizzard with 10% freeze chances, never a fun time because it's already really annoying. One Snow Cloak, one Blizzard Freeze could be a sentence. And let me just say, I had one of my unluckiest sets I think ever at the UIC facing that Snow team, and I had a really good matchup. It was sheer cold and Blizzard freezes that costed me, potentially could have ended my run. Like that could have actually ended my run. I was so tilted potentially, but luckily I didn't tilt at that event. But let me just say, enjoyment wise for this regulation, not my highest. I think the meta was okay. I wouldn't say it's absolutely anything crazy. Like for me, I don't think it's like this is bad. But yeah, I think for me it's like a, where would I put this? Where would I put regulation F? I think it's in the C tier for me, but is it worse than reg D? I don't know. To me, it's kinda even-ish. Because there's more teams in regulation F. I think the interactions are way less fun than D though, in terms of like playing. So what would I put this? It's either here or here. It's definitely not going higher than C, I'll tell you that much. I think the regulation was pretty boring in some of the interactions that I would have at sometimes. I just think the meta was just better. I think the meta was just better. I think I'll put it in F for now, though I do prefer playing D than F. Yeah, I prefer playing D than F, but I think regulation F, like I think Tailwind, like Tornadus or Urshifu did kind of need like something to put it down. Although I think Raging Bolt itself was like really broken instead, but like I do think the complaints about like, okay, Japan balance is overblown. I think Snow doing well was, I mean, it was cool for the time period, but actually facing Snow was frustrating as heck. Like that is a comp I would complain more than facing Japan balance is facing Snow. Trust me, I had a version of Japan balance with Golden Go that was specifically like really good into the Snow matchup, and I get freeze and sheer cold and I still lose, even though it was like really good. Like they needed that on that turn too, or I just win. All right, Regulation G. Also, I should probably note that Reg F would probably be the same. We haven't had any changes. I think I forgot to mention, like, again, I mean, like, there's some maybe like move tutors and like DLC moves that would affect maybe like if we brought back again Regulation B, Regulation E, Regulation D, and Regulation C. Was Scale Shot part of Regulation E or was it Regulation F? Because I can't remember like a big scale shotter that was used in Regulation B. I think it was Blueberry Academy, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that was F. So Regulation F onward would probably be the same if it was brought back, but I would not want it back. I would not want it back. Regulation G. We played this twice. We have played Regulation G twice. And I think I mean, like the start was more ride-on stuff. I think it kind of evolved over time. I don't really want to showcase all the things because we have two parts of this. I'm not showing every single event. I think I'll show like NIC World Championship, but yeah, it's the one restricted format. This is where we get all the legends like Calexes, Terapagos, Morons, and more. And you know, everyone says, oh, one restricted format is always super matchup dependent, and yeah, that is kind of true, but for the most part I think people over complain about Regulation G for the most part. Like, this is from me personally. I didn't play that many Regulation G events. I played like what I played Los Angeles and Worlds in Regulation G. I think I played 4 Regulation G events in total. Yeah, because I played 2 in the second part. But for the most part, like I don't know, I enjoyed playing Regulation G, at least from when I was practicing for Worlds. Usually I enjoy myself practicing for Worlds because usually I'll have a good team by then, and I'm really enjoying the format and how like it works. But yeah, I don't think I had any super big complaints. Like, yeah, there was like some say, oh, there's like this one team that's super dominant, like Arubega and Maridon stuff, which was one of the most common builds in the format back then. But I felt like it was pretty diverse in terms of restricted Pokemon. Like, you kind of saw like obviously different builds of like each restricted. And yeah, I mean, sure, it wasn't annoying like if you were playing a negative matchup depending on the restricteds. Oh, absolutely. But I think that's just something you have to accept about this. Like, I think like for the most part, like a lot of the restricteds were pretty usable back then, like the good restricteds at least. So you could find team cons for them. And I don't know, I felt like it was fine for the most part. Like, I really do think it was fine. As Regulation G part 2, we'll just go over EUIC, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, like, as you see, there's still innovation going on through the second part. Like, I thought it was pretty unique there. Like, we see like more compositions, we see different trends over time. For some reason, people brought Modest Calyx Shadow Rider to this event, and I'm like, huh, but okay. Like, I think for the most part, this format, you know, people don't like restricted formats. I get it. But I think for the most part, restricted formats are not the worst because sure, there's some matchup stuff, but for the most part, it's like playing wise, it's like, okay, you have all the legendary Pokemon. You pretty much have all the worst that a generation can do in this one format. And I feel like, okay, you kind of learn to accept it. And then of course, like, it's harder to, you can't really get away with mistakes like in like other games, because in this format, getting punished by a huge powerful restricted attack can be just game losing. And I don't mind that gameplay realistically. Like, I think it's actually like an expression of skill more than RNG for the most part. So I don't know, I think Regulation G was fine. It's not my favorite format, but I think people complain about it way more than like what it deserved. Like, I think it's a fine format. Like, I think Regulation G for me is like probably in the B tier. I like it more than A. I mean, I think it's, the thing is we have more data for G, which is why I like it more. So I'm going to put G higher than A. The reason I'm going to put it more than A is because, again, I don't have much data on A. At G, we have like 2 like splits of it, and I thought they were both fine. Like, I didn't even do that great in Reg G part 1. Like, I got day 2 at LA regionals. By the way, that was one of the worst run regionals that I've been to. And Worlds was fine. Like, I didn't win a set at Worlds, but the team I brought, I knew was risky. And unfortunately, the risk did not pay off. So I was okay with Regulation G. I was fine with Regulation G. I accepted it for what it was. I was okay with interactions. Part 2, I enjoyed it because I liked using the Calyx Shadow Rider team that I made. And yeah, like, I thought it was fine. Like, I wouldn't say it's like, oh, this is a good format. I wouldn't say it's a bad format. It's just like a format that's like decent. Like, I don't understand the hate. Did I love playing this? No. But was it fine in a Pokemon? That was like, okay, yeah. Again, Reg A could have went up or down depending on like if we had a longer, more data sets that I could really analyze. But G, we have more data, and I think I was okay with it more. Like, that's why I'm giving G like a in the middle, because I think it's like a pretty okay format. Like, I think it's the balance of like, okay, it's good enough, and you pretty much have to accept that these legendary Pokemon are super punishing. And I think there are a lot of compositions that you could realistically run with the legends. And again, I think it still had room to improve over time. And I think it's like one of the formats that really developed over time. Regulation H. We're currently going over Regulation H, but let's just say Regulation H is definitely an interesting one. Because, you know, it was looking pretty cool. There were a bunch of different teams for the most part. There was rain, like a lot of different things that were viable. Absolutely, like from a viewer standpoint, I think it's definitely one of the most exciting regulations, right? Because you got different teams, you got like not the same stuff over and over again. I think Regulation H as a spectator especially is probably one of the best ones to have out here, because you see different stuff just succeeding over time. I think players kind of realized the really strong stuff. And sure, there's like some changes that have been going on for the second round for sure. But let's just say it has Super Vault. And I'd say maybe a bit too optimized at this point, where players don't exactly enjoy it. I think what most players will probably mirror is like, it's a gambling format. One of the best moves, Loaded Dice, Scale Shot Dragonite, is probably an example. Dire Claw, everyone was complaining about Dire Claw. And Dire Claw is not fun. It isn't fun, but it's like fine, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's like a really diverse format in a way, where there's still like decent compositions, but like, the things that are winning are, other than like the Monterey example, because the Monterey was an outlier where it had Garganical and like Sylveon and Cypher win. For the most part, it isn't like super different, and like a lot of the compositions end up being like kind of like of the same core, right? Like of Rain, or it's going to be like the Dragonite or Saluna plus the Golden Go compositions. Like, there's clearly like the best mons are the best mons by far. And you're just changing the support cast a bit. I think for me, where would I put this? Regulation H for me is the one of my least favorable or least favorite regulations, mainly because I think the interactions are really boring. I think the regulations or the interactions are like as boring as F, probably worse realistically. I think the meta is cooler than Reg F. Yeah, it's not my favorite at all. I don't really like playing Regulation H personally, but from a viewer standpoint, because I don't really compete that much in Regulation, I guess like I played what, 3 regionals in Regulation F. That was it. Oh, and not 3 regionals, 2 regionals, 1 LIC. But granted, I didn't really like. The thing is, I also judge a format by like how much I enjoy prepping. And I didn't really prep at all for Regulation H, so it's hard to say. Because I went to the regionals last minutes and, you know, just played a team. I feel like I would hate prepping though in this format. Like, I don't think I would like prepping. I don't know though, because I think enjoyment's gonna be a big one. It's probably my least favorite. Like, I think this might actually be, I don't know if I would put in D though. I think it's like exciting to watch. I actually do think it's exciting to watch, other than unless you're playing the mirrors or stuff. But I think the interactions are super boring. Yeah. I'm thinking, is there anything I would say, oh, this is truly D? Like, is it truly D? And I don't think it is. I think Regulation H is either, I think it's one of the lowest formats for sure. I don't know if I think C is worse. Because I really didn't like C either. And I thought B was better than C, obviously, because I felt like C was just a carbon copy of B. There weren't really that many developments until the end. And I don't think those developments would have been fun. I don't know. I think I put Regulation H. The thing is, the Pokemon that really stand out in Regulation H are like your top Mons. In Regulation C, it's not like, oh, it was super defining of what the top Mons were. Regulation H, you kind of do. And I think that means it's like, I think the tops are way more centralized than any of the formats, I think, other than maybe like Torn Ursh, you could argue. But yeah, like, I enjoy D more than D's formats playing. Like, I'm fine with centralized formats because there's more things that you could build, more text that you could have for them. But yeah, like, these Pokemon are just really, like, some of the mods that, like, either the counterplay is so annoying. Yeah, like, I just not a huge fan. So Regulation H, I don't think it's a D tier format. I think it's kind of similar to me for C, but definitely not my favorite, at least personally. Again, gameplay interactions can be really boring. I do think the teams can be cool though. Like, I think viewing experience actually could maybe make this go to up higher. It might be, because I think watching Reg H games are probably better than Reg C, even though I think the interactions are more boring in general to play. To watch though, like, there's some mons, like some of the mirrors, that have been really not great to watch. That's tough to say, actually. Would I say that Regulation C is my least favorite format, though? I feel like no. I feel like it'd be H. I don't know. I think I'm putting H. I think I'm putting H. Unless I want to just put C and H in D tier. I'm debating about it, but like, I don't like a lot of formats in C anyway, realistically. Like, the thing is, I did enjoy D more than F, but I think F is overall a better format, technically. I don't know if I should use the same logic for here. Oh man, I bet I'm gonna get a lot of comments about this one. Like, this decision. You know what? The viewing experience probably puts it better. The viewing experience puts it a bit better. I think Reg C is the worst. I don't like Ruin Pokemon. I don't like Tinglu. And I don't think C was as good as like B at all. I think B was higher. Then we have Regulation I. And Regulation I is the double restricted format. And I will say that I only went to one event in Regulation I. So that was Worlds in 2025. And some of you might complain about what I'm about to do. But let's go over it, I guess. We had 2025. I mean, Regulation I thought was pretty interesting. You had like a bunch of different restricted duels. I felt like, you know, we saw some cool stuff like Ho-Oh. We would see some other builds go on as time goes on. But yeah, like, I feel like the pairings, like, there are obviously like really strong pairings like Kalixara Izama, Miraidon Kali Ice. But yeah, like, I think overall there were some really cool teams in Regulation I, and the way that it built up towards the World Championship, I thought was like a really neat story. Like, you would see a lot of the strong restricteds. I felt like there were time periods where like they got to better or worse, at least pairing wise. There were certain pairings that were able to kind of rise up, but for the most part, I thought it was a fine format. I wouldn't say it's like the most amazing format, but I thought it was like a fine format for what it was. Like, double restricted, it's kind of like, okay, this is the peak of everything is BS. You have all of these stats, you have all the powerhouses, no mistakes can be made. Same with Regulation G, but you really can't make mistakes because of the power of two restricted Pokemon. And again, I kind of like that gameplay more. Like I'm a huge fan of like that kind of gameplay because it really makes you value like board positioning and getting certain calls right more than like others, where I think it makes it a more enjoyable. And I think like I think a lot of the games that I've witnessed in Regulation I were the most enjoyable. Like there were a lot of great matches I think in Regulation I. Like the viewing experience to me, like I think gameplay wise, Regulation I is definitely one of my favorite formats to watch, because watching the players at the highest level of Regulation I, to me, I felt like it was a more skillful expression than some of the other regulations, at least to me personally. So I thought meta was cool. I thought like the conclusion was neat with worlds. Of course, it could change if we get Regulation I again, but like, I don't know. I had a lot of fun practicing for worlds. I think out of all the Scarlet Violet regulations, like I'd probably say this is playing the regulation. It is probably like a top 3 or top 2 format, maybe. I think the most fun I had was like Regulation D or E with Brambleghast, because that's probably like the most fun. But overall, like from what I've witnessed, the meta itself, the things that were viable, the storyline in general for like Regulation I thought it was a sick regulation personally. I think it's my top of Scarlet Violet, like actually. Like people are going to complain, oh, it's legendaries or your takes are terrible. Granted, this is my taste. This is my podcast. Like, like these are my opinions. You don't have to agree with my opinions, man. You don't have to agree with my opinions, but I'm just going to give you from a standpoint. I think the Regulation I sets were really good. I thought this World Championship was one of the best ones. I'm not saying it because I cut. I'm literally saying this is because a lot of the matches that I had at Worlds were the most enjoyable matches that I've had in a really long time, and easily the ones of Scarlet and Violet. Not just because I was winning a lot of them, it's because like all the games were super close. Like it felt really fun to be able to play at that kind of level with this kind of gameplay for the most part. All the compositions that I was able to face, like practicing, I felt was enjoyable for this Regulation 2, because it's like, okay, I can identify what I did bad and what I did well in a lot easier than, let's say, Regulation H, where in some games it's like, okay, what could I have done? And I really couldn't pinpoint. Like in some of these formats, I felt like I kind of was like the easiest, like, okay, I know what I could have done better. Like it was the easy one. You might be saying, oh, because later into the season and you know, probably improved as time went on and yada yada yada. But I do think Regulation I was really easy to kind of pinpoint that, like in general, just how the gameplay was, and I felt like it's the more enjoyable that I've had time wise in Scarlet Violet. So that is the tier list, I think, for Scarlet Violet regulations. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. You can leave a comment. You could be angry about it. You could agree with me. I don't care. But these are my opinions. Again, you're welcome to have your own opinions. Be civil about them in the comments down below. And I could see you disagree. I could see you agree. Remember, at the end of the day, this is one guy's opinion. This is my opinion on how they were based on metagame, personal enjoyability, viewing experience, and all of those factors. Like, again, I think Regulation I personally is my Scarlet Violet. I don't think there's any format that's an S tier to me, because personally, I don't think I would have anything like super S tier for me in general in Gen 9. Like, I don't think there's like a format that's like, oh, I'm gonna quit VGC because of this regulation. So I think like having the A to C tier was fine. Like there's no format that made me like, I'm so mad. Like I took my break personally because I wanted to take a break. It wasn't because of like the formats. And there wasn't a format that's like, oh, I'm gonna come out of my retirement just to play this format because it's so good. There wasn't any of that. It was just like, these formats were what they were to me, and yeah, like I enjoyed Regulation I a bunch and didn't really enjoy any of the formats in the C tier as much, except D. D was like okay, because again, I was playing Brambleghast, one fun team. That was the one fun team. But yeah, like I think some of the formats, again, we would probably see some shifts if it ever came back. Again, we don't know if like, it'll be the formats, but yeah, we would definitely see some stuff. And there would be changes, right? Like Reg A would be different if it came back. I think it would be pretty interesting if Reg A or Reg B came back. If I was to vote on like what format would come back, like the poll, I think some of you can probably guess. I did vote Reg I for the poll because that's what I personally enjoyed. What would I actually want to come back though? I think B. I like B the most. I don't really like the Ruin Pokemon interactions. I just don't like how like the Sword of Ruin or the Beads of Ruin really activate. I don't really like the Fisher Tinglu as much, but I do think that Reg B was a pretty fun format for what it was worth. And that would be the format I would probably vote for if I wanted like us to repeat a format. Like it would be Reg B. Like even though like if you gave me the option between Reg I and Reg B, it would actually be Reg B. I would choose Reg B because I think Reg B definitely had some cool tools, and I think it had probably the biggest changes that we could maybe see shift wise. Other than Regulation A, but I thought Regulation B did a pretty good job. I wasn't a huge fan again of the Ren Pokemon. That's why I don't really like it in C. And I also wouldn't mind E. E wouldn't be bad. But that is just my opinion. Again, I voted Reg I in the poll, but you know, at the end of the day, we could make this poll. It's not going to matter because you know why? The World Championship is just going to be Regulation G and Pokemon Champions. That's what's going to be. Regulation G and Pokemon Champions. We're going to play a brand new game and we're going to have the same format. Regulation G in Champions for the 2025 World Championship. You heard it first. But enough joking, but I think that's going to be it for me. This ended up taking a lot longer than I thought. I didn't think I was going to tier list this much. I kind of rambled on, especially during the first few parts. Because some of you might have needed a refresher. I need a refresher on some of the metas before. But yeah, like for the most part, I think I'm pretty happy with the tier list. Like I think Regulation I and Regulation B were the most enjoyable. Though I think personally, like gameplay wise, it would be like Regulation I, Regulation E, then Regulation B. But yeah, like I think I'm pretty happy with like how it stands overall with my tier list. So that is the Generation 9 Scarlet and Violet Regulation tier list. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know in the comments down below. Please be civil. Or civil. You could get into arguments with each other. Don't do that, but why waste time arguing on the internet for something that's not going to matter? I don't think these are really going to matter in the grand scheme of things, but yep, that is going to be it for me. Let me know which formats you would want personally coming up if we had to, and let me know if you think we're actually going to get another Scarlet Violet one, or we could just go back to Reg I. You know, we could just go back to Reg I. Or we could just go back to Reg G. We could just go back to Reg G. As long as we change from age personally, because I don't want another 3 months of regulation age personally, but that is just me. I don't know what I'm going to do for the next podcast. It might be another recap because there are several regionals going on at this point. I don't know if the next episode will be going over all of those, or will it be the world story one, which I've been delaying for a long time recording realistically, so maybe I should get on that. But hope you enjoy. Again, you can check out the podcast on Spotify and YouTube, and do me a favor, do all the things that do help out the podcast. Leave me a like, following, subscribing, downloads. I don't know how Spotify works, but you know what to do. You know what to do. Leave a comment as well. Let me know what you think about the podcast on Spotify. Again, let me know your thoughts and opinions. And again, this is just some guy's opinion, and they're not like super strong, because honestly, I don't really have super strong opinions about Generation 9, like tiers in general or formats in general. So I don't really care. Have a great one. And yes, next time we'll be doing something. But have some good food and enjoy time with loved ones. Catch y'all next time.